What is up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. Once again, we are back with F1 2020 Career Mode, the My Team journey here for Marduk Motorsport. In today's episode, we have the Austrian Grand Prix, which is quickly becoming a favorite of mine to drive on the F1 games. It simply feels fantastic to drive through the third sector. There's some highlights of the last episode if you want to go check it out, the French Grand Prix. In that episode, we updated our helmets, which you can see on screen now. And with Sevi's graphics, it looks absolutely stunning. Sevi is a magician. He's amazing. But anyway, here we are for today's episode. Podium celebration party and driver promotion filming is on the agenda for the 2 days we have off between one Grand Prix and the next. A very quick working week for Marduk Motorsport. We've got to turn around very quickly with the way of upgrades and upgrading of the facilities. Actually, no, I don't think I'll be upgrading any facilities for the time being. We do need to save up that little bit more for George Russell. Last episode, we thought we were in a lot of trouble, but no, it turns out I think we're going to be fine, especially after we get through this Grand Prix. Upgrade-wise, we put a major gearbox upgrade on the car. And that's going to take a few weeks to go on. And what we've also done is amended a failed power upgrade from many episodes ago. They'll both hopefully go on in time for the next episode of Career Mode. So that should be all gravy. But practice one, absolutely flying. The car feels fantastic with all the downforce upgrades. We are by far the best car downforce wise. And it feels amazing to drive around here. And here we are for qualifying for the Austrian Grand Prix. I am feeling pretty confident about this one. This always tends to be a strong track for me, so I'd expect to be pretty fast around here. But actually, heading into this episode, I think the likes of Ferrari and Racing Point upgraded. No upgrades for Mercedes or myself, that being our team. So I don't know, it might be a little bit closer at the front, but otherwise we should be right up there. But Q1 and Q2, George Russell did not top either. We had a bit of a rain-affected Q2, but it looks like the rain is dissipating for the start of Q3. So I guess the track will get better as we go along. It's still a little bit damp out there. The suggested tyre is intermediates for the time being, but we're just flicking between the tyres just to get an updated delta. And the delta is coming down massively to the dry tyres, to the point where now is the crossover point, and it's time for dry tyres. So that's how you can get a running update of what tyre is the fastest. If only you could have access to that mid-race during a Grand Prix. That would be sick to have Jeff just... yeah, anyway. If only we had that much information, but unfortunately we do not when we are out on track and on our own, essentially. But anyway, Q3, we're showing you the entirety of this session, both of our laps here. 102.0, which is right up there as the best time I've done all weekend. I think I did a 102.3 in Q1, but we're up in the ante here in this final part now, and we're gearing up for one final push for pole position. We're currently in P3 at the moment. It looks like the times aren't as strong so far in Q3 as what they were in Q1 when it was last dry, especially for George Russell. He did a 101.9 or 102 flat, either or. At the moment, he's languishing down at the bottom end of the table, so he needs to put a time in right at the end of the session here. We are riding on board for the majority of our lap, and you can see we are up by 0.06 of a second. We need to find 0.3, I think, on this lap if we want to get pole position. Make that 0.5 as Valtteri Bottas goes faster.
You're causing unnecessary wear to your transmission. Try to take it easy or we risk losing it.
Unnecessary wear to the transmission. Does that mean we've got a gearbox issue? We'll need to check that. We've still got a race or two to go in our... Oh my goodness! The power unit is absolutely cooked in many facets. So that's very distracting as we're putting the big boy pants on, having to risk it through the final two corners. That was not the distraction that I needed, and it ends up being P6 in the end of Q3 here in the Austrian Grand Prix qualifying. I'm completely shook by that because I changed all of my power unit components heading into qualifying. Why the hell are the majority of my components all old. I had to change or use combustion engine 2 in practice. So I think what's happened is between practice and qualifying, I changed it, but it hasn't registered by the game. What might have happened is I did like back out of the game and then come back in between practice and quali, and maybe it just hasn't saved. Oh my god. And then look at the gearbox, 75%. I think this happened this time last season. We had like unnecessary wear at like Baku and or France, and yeah, the wear is really bad. We need that gearbox upgrade now, but I'm going to roll with the punches and we're going to go into this Grand Prix. I don't think taking the penalty is going to be beneficial because it's a little harder to overtake here.
Welcome to the beautiful Styrian Mountains for another chapter in the story of the Austrian Grand Prix. And with me as usual is Anthony Davidson. Let's talk about Day. That was a great podium in the last race, so can they keep that momentum going this weekend?
There are never any guarantees in this business, but certainly the performance last time out would have boosted their confidence coming into this one.
After the points finish last race, let's aim to keep the momentum going.
That is really annoying. That's the last thing I needed heading into this Grand Prix, where we draw level with Valtteri Bottas in the championship standings. I would have changed my engine heading into this race, but you can't change engine components anymore from quali to the race, otherwise you are automatically put to the back. So there's no point. So we're going to run with the punches of this older engine and hope that we can get through with a good result. 5 red lights, and away we go for this Austrian Grand Prix. Looks like a pretty good start for a change. Sergio Perez behind us looking the challenge on the outside. Max Verstappen got off to an absolute flyer in this Grand Prix, side by side with both of the Red Bulls. And we're going to hopefully maintain position. You can already see the lack of straight line speed coming into fruition here. I think it's more prominent as we got the inside into turn 3, nearly running into the back of Albon. It's still side by side with Verstappen. Perez getting squeezed out as well, but it is 3 wide down the back straight once again. So let's see if we can get this track position back into overtake. Really desperately trying to cling on to whatever position I can. 3 wide at turn 4, and we do get the measure of both of them. I think Perez got squeezed out by Verstappen, who coincidentally was squeezed out by me. So it was a clinching point there at turn 4, right on the apex. And unfortunately, 3 into 1 just does not go. And Sergio just squeezed off the circuit. So everyone wanting to be opportunistic there. It's hard to put blame on anyone in particular. Potentially all of us, we all could have done a better job of avoiding that from happening. But I would say that's just a racing incident. But we're going to press on. You might have seen that we were lacking in a straight line there. I think it's more obvious when you get to the higher end of the gears, of the rev range. And I think that's down to the turbo, which is at around 80%. Our internal combustion engine, thankfully, just the engine itself, is a newer one. It's like 20 or 30%, but it's all the other components, the MGK, the MGH, the control electronics. What else? There's one other component, but that's not too bad. That is the energy store. That one is actually below 50%, so that's not too bad, but it's the other ones that I'm worrying about, especially the turbo, which is responsible for a lot of your straight line speed. But you can see we're just a sitting duck, really. We are catching up to Alexander Albon, but crucially, Lance Stroll is catching up to us at a vast rate of knots, and we're losing touch with our teammate and the race leaders, who we are pretty much equal with. You can see just how slow we are relative to them. So I've had to put a number on it. I'd say maybe like 3/10, 4/10 slower than the leaders around this track, which is pretty big. Daniel Ricciardo is out of the session. Let's hope to see a safety car, which can bring me back into it. But at this stage, I'm struggling. I just don't have the pace to run with the race leaders. You can see Daniel was kind of hovering on the racing line there, and it took his teammate to run into the back of him for him to finally get off the circuit, but by then the damage was already done. I'm so annoyed. I'm actually so annoyed that this has happened. Team radio.
Okay, we have an issue with the control electronics box. That's going to do additional damage to all other power unit components.
That is wonderful news. You might not have heard that too well, but basically Jeff was saying that the control electronics is getting pretty badly worn, and when it gets worn like this, it actually starts to do damage to the rest of the components within the power unit system. So we've got a fresh engine in there, and that's going to get damaged by the control electronics simply by its age. So it's just a compounding issue that we've got as well. As well as on top of that, we've got the gearbox, which is flailing as well. So I think around this point in the Grand Prix, we started to lose a gear. The gear that we did lose was 4th gear. But thankfully the team were able to rectify that pretty quickly and were able to get back up to speed once again. But yeah, here's the running order of the top guys. You can see George Russell running in P2, Valtteri Bottas leading the way here in Austria. Valtteri's AI pretty realistic because Valtteri is pretty good at this circuit. He's got a few wins here, I believe. Here in Russia he seems to be pretty decent. But let's see if George can go on a charge. We are all running very deep into this Grand Prix, so I think that's going to favour the Marduk Motorsport boys with our tyre wear upgrades, and we'll see what we can do from here. It's a one-stop for everybody, and I'm assuming the race leaders will use the 2 softer compounds as well as we get up the inside of Lance Stroll there. Went in a little bit too deep. Not racing as well as I could. I'm having to compensate for the lack of straight line speed. I'm pushing a little bit more into corners. I feel like Fernando Alonso in the McLaren Honda days. But thankfully, this is only a temporary problem. Once we get through this race with a bit of damage limitation, we can look forward to some better performance in future races. But yeah, it's just annoying that we have to sit through this. But I'm doing my best job to fight on as best I can. We rejoin on lap 17. People are making their stops. And I think probably the best we can get today is P6, unless there is some kind of issues for the top 5. You never say never. It seems like in every race we've had so far, there has been some kind of niggling issue for one of the lead teams, so I'm not counting myself out just yet, and especially if there's a safety car, that could really bail us out of trouble, but for the time being, it is struggle street.
A mechanical issue means you've lost one of the gears. Say again, you have lost access to one of the gears.
Okay, just in the replay cameras, and Jeff is somehow hijacking that to tell me I've lost a gear, but that was actually an outdated message. That was many laps too late. I told you about the gearbox issues I had losing a gear. That was from 5+ laps ago. But the car is fine again now. But it's just not an ideal scenario knowing that the gearbox could probably lose a gear at any moment again. So let's hope that that doesn't happen. I think worst case scenario, what's the worst thing that can happen with a gearbox? Sometimes it can just flat out fail. I've heard from some of you guys in your career mode journey, so let's hope that that doesn't happen. I'd like to know your feedback for the next episode, whether I should just take a grid penalty in the next race and then go from there, take a fresh gearbox, take fresh engine components, take bonus like spec 3 or column 3 of power unit components. We may need to do that anyway, so we may as well do it at the next race. I'm not too sure what it is yet, but hopefully it's a track which is easier for overtaking than this one. I was slightly worried about coming back through the field at this circuit. That's why I opted to run with the older power unit components. But in hindsight now that I've seen the performance and seen just how slow we are in comparison to our rivals around us, I should have just started at the back and given myself a chance to come back through. We've got 6 laps to go. We can still get P6 in this Grand Prix, but the car is starting to smoke a little bit, so something in the engine is getting really bad. Really, really bad. Probably like 90-odd%. Let's have a look. It is the control electronics that's come out of nowhere. Wear-wise, I think it's literally like tearing apart or destroying itself in there, because it was at like 70-odd%. It was at 67%, I remember, at the start of the Grand Prix, and now it's 94%. It's wearing it like a percent a lap. And we've got we had 5 laps to go. On current merit, it may only just, and I mean only just, squeak through to the end of the Grand Prix. We know that if a component gets to 100%, that is an instant failure, and you're out of the race. But I don't know if like in F1 2020, oh my god, I can't even talk now. I don't even know if in F1 2020 whether you can just have a random terminal failure beyond a certain point of a component's life. We know that is the case for tires. Anything above 75% and you can be kaput at any moment. But the power unit, that is the big question. 96%, and this thing is absolutely smoking away like a Sunday afternoon barbecue here in this Austrian Grand Prix. Who wants a sausage? Anyone want some schnitzel? Because I'm cooking for everybody. through the final corner, and I'm just struggling to hold on to Lance Stroll at this stage. I haven't even had the pace of Stroll, to be honest. Every time I've overtaken him in this Grand Prix, I haven't been able to pull away or even keep him behind me. Such is the detriment of my straight line speed. I've just been stealing his slipstream, stealing his DRS all race, trying to save fuel. My fuel consumption has been even worse because of the wear on the engine. Everything, it's just a compounding problem. Everything is worse. And so just even getting into this position 6, which we're in at the moment, has been such a struggle. But it might all come undone now. Let's do our best to just hold on. I think it's at 98%. The screen is very small on my screen, but it's very, very close. I think from this moment onwards, we're not even going to touch the curbs. Because from my understanding, running on off-track surfaces like curbs, gravel traps, grass, can deal excessive wear to the control electronics, and maybe that's why it's been wearing out at an accelerated rate as it's got towards the end of its life. A lot of curbs you have to ride on around here in Austria to be fast, and so we're just going to stay off all of them if we can. But it looks like Stroll is coming back at us here on the final lap of the Grand Prix, and I think I'm going to risk it again. I think I'm going to risk it for the chocolate biscuit. Let's put it up in a reach and overtake. I don't think this is doing any of the components any favors by running in a high engine mode and overtake. The engine itself is already running a lot hotter than what it should be because of the MGU-H being as worn as what it is. Everything is just it's not loving life at this stage, but I'm going to put it through one last lap of turmoil to get this position up the inside of Lance Stroll. We go. Every single point in this championship might matter if we are level on points with Valtteri Bottas at this stage. We can ill afford to give away any more points than what we need to. George Russell crosses the line to win the Austrian Grand Prix. There is still a question mark as to whether we can get to the end and even get to the end in P6. So we're going to hold on as best we can through the final couple of corners. I am checking the status of the engine like crazy. Final corner, run up to the line. Please hold on for one more straight. P6. Oh my goodness. I have never been more stressed to get P6 in a Grand Prix ever. Well done, Ferrari.
That's it then for another spectacular Grand Prix here at Austria. And a truly magnificent drive to hang on and take the win. What do you think it was, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition today?
Well, they certainly stood out as a drive with tons of confidence on the track. I think their ability to keep their cool, even during some of the more hectic parts of the race, meant they were able to capitalise on the mistakes of other drivers, giving them the opportunity to make their way to the top spot with ease.
A show-stopping performance from the three drivers approaching the podium right now. It's been an interesting Grand Prix, that's for sure.
Where the hell is Bottas and all that? He was leading this race in the early stages, but he's given up the lead to my teammate, and he's just given up all those spots to Leclerc and Hamilton. What a calamity for him. Pole position to P4. That is how you throw away some championship points, my friend. But there we go. We held on. That was the most stressful end to a Grand Prix that I've had for P6 probably ever. That was too much. Thankfully, we only trailed by 4 points in the driver's standings. Not much of a disaster in the end there. We got away with it, running the old power unit components. We still have to run the gearbox next race. And that's if we do run it next race. We might take a grid penalty. 8 points behind in the constructors. So we've actually gained ground on Mercedes in the team's championship. So that is, wow, that is unbelievable. Well done to George for getting the win there and keeping the pressure on Mercedes. You love to see it. But, you know, on our side, the control electronics, what the hell went on there? We started off at 67%. I think, like, over the half of the race went by and it was fine, the wear. But then it got to a certain point where it just started wearing out at, like, a ridiculous rate, like 1% a lap. It kind of cooled off at the end there. It started to wear at about 1% and maybe slightly less in the last few laps. I thought I was going to get to 99% on the very last lap and maybe in danger of 100% because I turned the engine up, but thankfully the wear went in the other direction and we were just able to get to the end of the Grand Prix. So I've got to send a bottle of champagne or something to Ferrari for building, I don't know, it's both lucky and unlucky. It's like Hamilton's puncture at Silverstone. Unlucky that we suffered so much wear and that we had the old power unit components in our car in the first place, but kind of lucky that given how much it was wearing, that we were able to reverse the effects of that a little bit towards the end of that Grand Prix, and we were able to hold on to be able to finish. So in the end, crisis averted, but let's never do that again. Well, let's just absolutely 100% positively make sure that we always have the desired power unit components going in the car as we start qualifying. This is the second time this has happened this season. This time, arguably, kind of not my fault, but still, it's happened regardless, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen again, because silly mistakes like this could cost us championships, and that's not what we want. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the Grand Prix. It was very stressful from my side, but hopefully you guys were entertained, and I'll join you guys for the next episode, where we're going to talk contracts. We've got to sort out George Russell's contract for the remainder of the season. I think the ideal result is we re-sign George. I hope that we can afford him. I hope that he doesn't ask for too much. Fingers crossed his driver acclaim hasn't gone up too much and he's not more expensive than what he was previously. But yeah, I think the dream scenario for everyone involved is to keep George in the sport and keep him at this team. We don't want to see him moving anywhere else. Look at the smoky barbecue of that Ferrari. And look at that across the line. That is... How has that got to the end? I'm very lucky.